Hey there everybody, it's my first time posting a video on YouTube. I'm sorry if it seems unprofessional or don't know what I'm doing, but the subject matter here is a Briggs and Stratton 900 series engine. I bought this engine 5 years ago and repowered a Troy-built Econo horse tiller because the Tecumseh on it had failed. Now, that being said, I bought the Briggs and Stratton for two unique reasons. Number one, as you see, it has the power takeoff drive off the camshaft gear. The Econo horse needed that in order to have the backup function, so when you got to the end of your row, if you needed backup, turn around, you could do so. Number two, I've worked on these small engines for probably most of my adult life. Probably I'd say since about 16 years old. And then I happen to be in my 50s at this point in time. They've had a great reputation. I've always thought they were a good stand-up company. Based on the man that I worked for at the time and my own experience, I thought they was a really good deal. But sadly, I have to admit, at this point in the game, I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for another Briggs and Stratton motor. I wouldn't care if they brought me a free one tomorrow. I'm not really thrilled. So here's the problem. As you notice, I've got the rear crankcase cover busted loose. What had happened was, run the tiller through the end of the garden there, grabbed hold of the backup lever, wanted to back the tiller up. So I reached down there and I grabbed a hold of the lever and I pull her up. Boom! She shuts down. She won't go no more. Well, having worked on these little turds forever and then some, I knew it was fatal. It was pretty obvious. Well, I'll show you why. Now, here's the fun part. No problem there. Plastic gears have been used for governors and whatnot for years and years on Briggs and Stratton motors. Absolutely no problem. Now here's the real problem. As you notice, this here gear is what drives my power takeoff function to provide the reverse feature on my tiller. Now, this camshaft, if you look at, is all one piece, solid machine, steel, cast iron, whatever the hell you want to call it. Okay? No problem. In the cheaper model engine that doesn't have the shaft, this part here where the lobes are to actuate your valves up and down, that's made out of plastic and it's pinned on there. Junk. So you turn around, you look here at this crankshaft, and those of you out there who have ever worked on a Briggs and Stratton motor in your lifetime, you notice right off the bat there's a problem. You see that? That's a notch. Well, why is that notch there? Here's my keyway. My keyway always correlated with the notch that held the steel gear on the crankshaft to turn the camshaft. Well, here's your gear. Look at that baby. Ain't she great and wonderful? Finest piece of plastic that you could ever buy. See that there where she sheared off? This area right here? That originally lined up with that right there. Now here's the part that sheared off. This right here. This little bitty POS that they thought was going to hold that on there to run that camshaft, to actuate them valves, to keep that motor running, and provide power for a power takeoff, or otherwise known as an accessory drive, to do what I need to do. That's why I bought this engine, because of that feature right there. That's the only reason, aside from the fact that I know Briggs and Stratton, and I thought, you know what? Good company, I'm gonna buy another one. Well, here's the story. Yeah, it's 5 years old. You think I'm crying about spilt milk? Well, let me give you a little background. 5 years ago, I had an accident. I've had 2 surgeries. Wasn't able to run my tiller, wasn't able to do nothing with it. So it's sitting in my barn. I'll guarantee you right now, that engine don't have 10 hours of operation time on it. There's absolutely no way it's got more than that. If I wanted to go to the trouble of having more parts laying around my shop, I'd pull that head off and show you the bent intake valve and then show you the cross hatching in the cylinder walls to prove to you that that engine has no more than 10 hours runtime on it. So you're thinking, man, I'm just watching me a bitch fest here. This guy put this thing on YouTube and all he's doing is cutting Briggs and Stratton down, crying because he done this and that. Well, more power to you, brother, but I'm just trying to state a simple fact to you right now. I called Briggs and Stratton customer service. I went through all the proper channels. I got my local dealer involved. We did the whole 9 yards. And what does Briggs and Stratton say? Well, that there date code right there on that motor says that thing's 5 years old. You're not covered no more. I don't care if you run it for 5 minutes or 5 days or 50 weeks. We're not going to cover it. Well, here's the real kicker. This engine was only in production for right around a year, give or take. They knew there was a problem with it. They stopped production on it. They discontinued it. They changed the numbers and crap on it. They no longer do this. You can't buy this. It's not available. It's discontinued. Here's another thing. You can't buy that crankshaft because it's discontinued. They done away with it. They got smart and started making it the way they ought to be, which, by the way, happens to be the little motor that they put on the go-karts. Everybody's heard about these little Briggs and Stratton motors that they put on these go-karts. Are so big and bad, they run so great. Yeah, they do. Because they've got a keyed crankshaft. They've got a steel gear that runs a steel camshaft. They got a little bit more valve spring pressure, so they knew they had to do that to do all that. Well, what the hell happened here? What happened here? Is this place owned and operated by monkeys, managed by clowns, and assembled by retards? I don't understand. I'm not crying about something that I bought and abused. I realize that warranties are not for everybody because you can't warranty everything. If I built that motor and sold it to you, I'd stand behind it because I know it was failed from the word go. There is no way in this God's world that that piece of junk right there with that little piece of crap right there was going to take and run that right there to do anything. It takes horsepower to turn that. Help me out, folks. You know, this ain't some guy just crying about blowing some money on something that didn't pan out. This is about a total, actual engineering defect that should have never made it to the market. This thing should have never been put on the market, and they should stand behind this piece of junk because they built it, and it would have never survived. If I'd have run it 5 years ago, if I'd have been physically able to do so, it would have died in the same time frame. The only reason it took 5 years to die is because I wasn't physically able to do it. But I've reached out to Briggs. I've went through my dealer. I've done everything I can do. And at this point in time, I'm about ready to take and smash it to pieces and mail it to them free of charge so they can mount it on their wall of shame and stare at it every day and realize that they got retards, engineering things. Briggs and Stratton never done this before. Never. But now all of a sudden they decide it's time to screw the consumer. Go out and spend the money. Go buy it. That's fine. You know, if I was crying about something I'd done to this motor, if I abused it, if I didn't maintain it, then I would gladly shut up right now and it'd be my problem. But this is not my problem. This is a manufacturing defect because the engineering team who designed it definitely had their head somewhere the sun don't shine. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.